Trust me, friends, I am no stranger to preempting cities and towns. But I do draw the line at kneecapping, and this bill kneecaps local control.
Welcome back to Square Off. Here's the kneecapping that Republican State Senator John Kavanaugh was talking about. A sweeping bill to expand all kinds of housing by knocking down cities' zoning rules. The bill's sponsor, State Senator Steve Kaiser, was my guest on last week's Square Off. He worked on the legislation for months, but it was his bill that was kneecapped. So, is there any hope for legislation that might ease the state's massive housing shortage, make homes more affordable, and/or help people who are homeless? Or is that just too much to ask? Joining us to discuss all that and more are Democratic consultant Stacy Pearson of Lumen Strategies and Republican Paul Bentz of HighGround Public Affairs, better known as the polling guy. Welcome back to Square Off. Let's start with discussion with disclosures of each of your firm's interests in this debate. You're here because of that. Stacy, why don't you start?
Yeah, I do work with a group called Home Arizona, mostly developers and folks that have worked in housing for a number of years.
So on the developer builder side. Paul?
We work for multiple cities and also work for the League of Cities and Towns, representing the most popular local government in the state.
Okay, ooh, smack talk already. Okay, but on the cities and town side, these are the two main sides.
Yes.
We're dealing with right now. Steve Kaiser's bill was widely perceived as pro-builder, pro-developer, anti-city, as you heard John Kavanaugh just said. It was the most ambitious bill of this session. Stacy, what does that bill's failure tell us about the kind of housing solutions this legislature could produce?
Well, it's interesting because Home Arizona actually opposed the bill because it went too far. So this is not a solution that can be forced down the throats of local communities, and state preemption is not often the answer. But what does have to come together is a faster, quicker, more nimble city review and approval process, and some state help in terms of subsidizing or encouraging developers to build more affordable projects.
Okay, so state help, and you're talking about permitting there?
Correct.
Basically?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Paul, how's that sound to you guys?
I mean, I completely agree. I mean, the bill we are talking about was a blatant attack on local control. Quite frankly, this was not about helping more affordable housing. This was flooding the market and hoping that maybe some of those houses that were flooded in would be affordable. There are many tools that could be used to make this more affordable that the legislature, quite frankly, is not interested in. They attack cities multiple times when they come to inclusive zoning, when they come to offering incentives. In fact, the city of Phoenix is being sued right now because they want to offer an incentive for affordable housing. If the legislature is serious about making housing more affordable, there's multiple avenues that they can go down. This bill just simply wasn't it.
And so I'm aware of a long menu of choices for cities. They can pick, kind of choose their own adventure in housing.
Right.
Be required to pick 2 or 3 that would help ease the housing crunch. What do you think might be at least one of the most things that this legislature can agree on and cities and towns can agree on as well?
Well, Affordable Housing Trust has worked in numerous communities where money is available that can be borrowed at a lower interest rate, which reduces the cost of a project and ultimately allows for lower rents or lower cost sales product. And certainly density is an issue. There are communities that, certainly not Fountain Hills or Paradise Valley, but there are communities that are close to public transportation that can put more houses on a lot.
That's something the cities and towns can agree with?
I think both of those things are true. At the same time, the legislature needs to stop making it more difficult for cities and towns to be able to regulate their own items. The short-term rentals is a great example. They were warned that by approving unmitigated short-term rentals throughout the state, that it would cause problems. Quite frankly, we have 23,000 short-term rentals in Maricopa County now, and 31% of homes that were bought in 2021 were bought by investors. That's the reasons that we're seeing challenges when it comes to affordability. It's less about the zoning, it's more about these other outside factors that are really impacting the cost, and that's something that they should be looking at.
Okay, and so there's always the caveat that no bill is dead until the session is over. Do you think something's going to get done? There will be a meeting of the minds here.
The League of Cities and Towns and others have offered multiple solutions that they don't seem to be interested in addressing. I think coming to the table with real sense of actual negotiation might be a wise idea to help some of these communities.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the community writ large is looking at every solution, and if there is something that's legislative, that's great. But at the same time, we need to be able to get the cities the resources they need to hire more people, retain more people, turn plans around more quickly. I mean, at this point, there are things that are taking 3 times as long as they did 3 years ago.
Okay, well, let's cross our fingers and hope we see something by end of June, July maybe. Our next topic, a possible constitutional showdown between the state's chief executive, Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs, and the highest court in the state, the Supreme Court. I can't recall anything like this, period. Maybe you have a longer history than I do, Paul, and you too, Stacy, but I can't recall this. Here's the summary. The governor can the governor refuse to carry out an execution, as Hobbs has now done after the Supreme Court issues a warrant of execution? Court is now deciding whether to force Hobbs to enforce the death penalty against murder convict Aaron Gunches. I don't want to get into the law because we're not lawyers,
right.
But politically, was this the right thing for Hobbs to do?
It certainly aligns with her ethos, her values. The death penalty is not among them. It certainly doesn't work, as good as the vengeance might feel to the victims. It's just, we're talking about arcane policy here. And the fact that we don't have the information required is good for her to be evaluating. Where the drug came from, what was source, how does it work? I mean, are we using Windex? We have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions.
And to your point, her response has been, A, you can't make me, to the court, and B, even if you tried to, we don't have the drug. We don't know what it is because the last guys didn't leave us the instructions on where to find it. So politically a good idea, somebody who's stood up for the rule of law as Secretary of State to basically snub the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, if it comes to that?
She's taken a really smart approach by questioning the procedures and saying there's not a guidebook, that they don't know how to do this, that they're not fully confident that they're competent to do this. It's a really unique approach because it doesn't then become about the death penalty. It becomes about the rules there. Chris Mays has said she is not opposed to the death penalty, but she just wants it to be safe and constitutional. That's the question that the governor needs to answer. Does she feel the same way? Because I'm not sure she does. She's using this very brilliant maneuver to sort of slow things down. But the question is, ultimately, voters passed the lethal injection in 1992, and it's been in the law of the land for more than 30 years. As one of her first acts as governor, is that what she really wants to go after?
Yeah, that will be interesting. And it's kind of a two-pronged strategy. You can't make me, but you know what? And this has nothing to do with the constitutional question, right? That we can't do it.
Right.
Period, even if you wanted to.
Yeah, I do want to flag, though, Arizonans outlawed the death penalty before they passed it again in 1982. So we've flip-flopped on this issue as a state.
Okay, lots more to discuss.